The trustful face of spring, Saturday, March 10th, 1888, dawned like a promise kept too early. In a narrow tenement on Orchard Street, 12-year-old Clara Hayes pressed her nose to the frost-rimed window pane and blinked in disbelief. The air outside wasn't sharp with winter's bite. It was soft, almost sweet, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and something green pushing through the city's grime. Her mother, bent over the wash basin, paused mid-scrub. "Smell that?" Clara whispered. Her mother straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "Smells like hope," she said, though her eyes flickered toward the empty coal bin in the corner. Hope didn't heat the stove. Hope didn't fill bellies. But for once the world seemed generous. Men walked without overcoats. Women carried parasols instead of muffs. Even the pigeons strutted with a spring in their step. Clara's little brother, Eli, had already bolted downstairs to join the boys, kicking a rag-wrapped ball in the alley. No gloves. No scarves. Just bare hands and bare cheeks flushed pink with joy. That afternoon, Clara's schoolteacher, Miss Lavinia, read aloud from the New York Herald, a poem by Walt Whitman, the first dandelion celebrating, innocent, golden, calm as the dawn. Clara pictured it, a bright yellow bloom peeking through thawed soil, unafraid, trusting the world would be kind. She didn't know that by Monday that dandelion would be buried under 4 feet of snow. Sunday brought more warmth, more disbelief. Clara's father, a typesetter at a downtown print shop, came home humming, his arms full of day-old bread he'd traded for a favor. "They say it's the mildest winter in 20 years, he told them over a supper of thin broth and boiled potatoes. "Maybe we'll have an early spring. Maybe the factory'll stay open through April." Clara went to bed dreaming of cherry blossoms. She woke to rain. Not gentle rain, but a cold, insistent drumming that turned to sleet by midnight. The wind began to howl not the usual city groan of carts and cries, but a deep, animal roar that shook the window frames and rattled the loose brick in the chimney. By dawn on Monday, March 12th, New York was no longer a city. It was a white wilderness. Clara opened her eyes to silence thick, muffled, unnatural. Outside, the street had vanished. Snowdrifts climbed halfway up the first-floor windows. The world was reduced to a narrow tunnel of white, the wind screaming like a banshee down the alley. "Mama?" Clara called, her voice small. Her mother was already at the stove, feeding the last of their kindling into the belly of the iron beast. "Stay inside," she said, her voice tight. "Don't open the door for anyone, not even if they knock." But by midday, the knocking came not from strangers, but from Mrs. Gable from 3B, her face blue with cold, dragging 2 shivering children behind her. "The roof's leaking ice," she gasped. "We can't stay." Clara's mother didn't hesitate. "Come in. Share the warmth. Soon." The tiny apartment held 9 people 10 when old Mr. Fenwick from the ground floor shuffled in, his rheumatic hands trembling. They huddled together on pallets of blankets and newspapers, passing a single cup of weak tea. Clara gave her shawl to little Ruthie Gable, who was coughing weightily into her sleeve. Outside, the storm raged with a fury no one had ever seen. Not the sailors, not the weathermen, not even the grandmothers with their old country proverbs. This wasn't winter. This was winter's vengeance. By Tuesday, the coal was gone. Clara's mother made a decision. "I'm going to Finkelstein's," she said, pulling on every layer. She owned 2 petticoats, a man's wool coat borrowed from a neighbor, mittens stuffed with rags. "But, Mama," Clara started. "I won't be long," her mother said, kissing her forehead. "Keep the door barred. Watch Eli." Clara watched from the window as her mother vanished into the whiteout, swallowed by the storm within 10 steps. Hours passed. The fire died to embers. Frost crept up the inside of the windows. Eli whimpered in his sleep. Mrs. Gable's cough worsened. Just as Clara began to imagine her mother lost, forever frozen in a drift, buried like the dandelion in Whitman's poem, the door rattled. It was her mother, half collapsed against the frame, snow crusted in her hair, lips cracked and bleeding. But in her arms she clutched a small bottle of medicine and a sack of hardtack. "Finkelstein's still standing," she rasped. "He's feeding anyone who makes it there. And there's a nurse. From the war. She knows pneumonia." She collapsed onto the floor, and Clara wrapped her in every blanket they had. On Wednesday, the wind finally relented. Men emerged like ghosts from buried doorways, wielding shovels, brooms, even broken chair legs to carve paths through the snow. Clara, wrapped in her father's scarf, ventured out with Eli clinging to her hand. The city was unrecognizable, a frozen labyrinth of white canyons and ice-sheathed carriages. A horse stood frozen mid-step, its eyes glazed over, its breath long gone. But life stirred. At Finkelstein's grocery, now a makeshift shelter, soup simmered in a dented pot over a coal brazier. A woman with silver-streaked hair, Mrs. Abernathy, the nurse, was applying mustard plasters to fevered chests. Clara's mother sat near the stove, color returning to her cheeks. "Rebecca's fever broke," Mrs. Abernathy said quietly, nodding toward a sleeping girl. "She'll live," Clara's mother wept. By Friday, the elevated trains groaned back to life. Telegraph wires, though still down in places, began to hum again. The Herald ran a front-page correction, not of facts, but of tone joking that Whitman's dandelion had been temporarily relocated to the North Pole. And yet, something had changed. Neighbors who'd never spoken before now shared bread. Bankers shoveled snow alongside street sweepers. Churches opened their doors not just for worship, but for warmth. The storm had stripped away pretense, revealing the raw, beating heart of the city. We are all just people, trying to get home. Years later, as an old woman living in a Bronx walk-up with grandchildren of her own, Clara would tell the story every March. "They said it was the worst storm in history," she'd say, stirring a pot of chicken soup. And maybe it was. But I remember something else. I remember Mrs. Abernathy's hands rough but gentle. I remember Finkelstein giving away his last loaf. I remember my mother walking into a blizzard for medicine she didn't have to buy. She'd pause, then smile. And I remember that dandelion buried, yes, but not dead. Because spring always comes back, even after the longest winter. Outside her window, snow might still fall. But inside, the stove burned bright, the table was full, and the circle of care remained unbroken. Just like in 1888. Just like always.